But understand that actually God had a purpose. He knew there'd come a day when you'd hear this and you'd hear how precious your story has been, how much He's trusted you with it, how much He has still to do in transforming it, using it out there in the kingdom. Okay? Remember, He created you to be uniquely you. So what He put inside you, all your gifting and potential, and your story come together. And so as the transformation and as the blossoming of your gifting happens, and it can happen when you stop doing this and holding yourself tight because you're so frightened of the world and so bound up with the pain of the past, open it up and step and be free. Okay? And so the forgiveness is a big part of letting go those who've harmed you in the past. But some may be still harming you now. And Jesus gave us the example when He was on the cross, while they were still doing things. He said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Forgiveness was current for Him. He said, how many times did you forgive? 70 times 7. Forgiveness is a daily kind of clearing accounts so that we're free. What we do when we let go of people there, we leave them to the judgment of Jesus. In the Sermon on the Mount, God speaks a lot about don't judge. If we're judging, we are holding people to account. We're not letting them go. We're putting ourselves in the place of judge. Now the problem is, we said yesterday on that slide, and you've got it in your book, that any attitude, any expectation, any vow, any beliefs that you hold that are not in the character, the nature, and the word are ungodly. Okay? And outside those things, outside godly thoughts, if we have those things, if we make judgments, they have the weight of legal agreements. And this is the way it works. In a court of law, if I say something about Stephen, if I've said something about Stephen, okay, and I say, this is in inverted commas, sir, he's a waste of space, okay? The devil is beside and he says, yes, he is. Where you've got two people in agreement, you've got the weight of a legal agreement. So what we do is we bind up each other by our thoughts. This is why it's so important that we get our thought life right, that we come into line. I mean, what goes on in here is where all the damage in the world happens. This is where it all starts. Okay, so many of us do the work of the devil because actually we're speaking out and we're agreeing and we're making judgments and whatever. And God says, no, you don't judge, you forgive. Judgment is about being outside the waterfall, and in the Old Testament they were under judgment with the law. So if you broke a bit of the law, it was sin, there was a penalty to be paid. It was legalistic, all right? Here is the law written down. If you break this law, you pay this penalty. After the cross, there's grace. Jesus has paid for our sin. We are now under a new rule and reign and sovereignty, when actually it's much more. We can't cope with it without the Holy Spirit's teaching and transforming. But what he's saying is, bring your mind and your heart into line with me, And then you'll start living like Jesus did, in freedom, and the light will shine from us more because we've got that flow. Okay. So forgiveness for us is something that we need to teach people. I mean, I've told this story, and some of you will have heard this before, but it illustrates it so much. I was working with a young man whose father was an alcoholic and would come home and beat mum, and he would try and get in the way to protect mum, and dad would pick him up and throw him at the wall. And so he didn't have a good relationship with his father, obviously. When he was about 7, he started being abused by a priest. That went on till he was about 10. And then he began selling himself in loos because he wanted a relationship. He was looking for a man who would hold him. That was what the priest gave him. He gave him some bits of the father as well as the things that he shouldn't have had. He got very angry. He beat up people. He went into the SAS. He killed. When he came to me, he was a broken man, and he came in, and he'd be like this, and he'd come in and he'd slouch and he'd slump in his chair. Okay. And he learned his story, and then one day we got round, we'd been talking about forgiveness, and he came and he said he wanted to forgive the priest. And so we prayed, and as he spoke out the words of forgiveness, he changed. He was slumped, and he started doing this. His head started coming up. He started moving his shoulders. He was going, when we finished praying and we were talking, he said, oh, that feels different. Oh, he said, When he got up to go, he got his military bearing. He walked out like a soldier. When he came back the next week, he said, I cannot believe what it's like not carrying that weight. I hadn't realised the burden that I was carrying. We all, until we forgive those in the past. And the thing that happens is that when we forgive, we step into freedom. We're not saying it didn't happen. We're not saying the consequences didn't happen or the difficulties of the consequences that happened. But what we're saying is that under the command of Jesus, we have released the person to the judgment of Jesus himself. That it's not our role to judge, but to let go. But our role is to both forgive and then find the healing that comes. And there is healing. There is healing for everything that anybody suffered. Jesus says it. You know, there's nobody who doesn't come to him and seek forgiveness and absolution who won't have absolution. Okay. There is a process. I've given it to you on the card. First of all, it's 7 steps. First of all, it's recognise that we're all sinners. Okay? We all start from the same place. We're born in the fallen world. It's when we understand these things as we go through life that we can do something about it. But all of us are from the same place. The second thing, I need to look at these because my head's not working quite well at this moment. Yeah, it's deciding to forgive. decision, forgiveness is a decision, it's not a feeling. When my second husband died, through gritted teeth, I forgave him. It took me 5 years to work through the feelings. Okay? And I have to say, I forgave him through gritted teeth, and I thought at that moment, you know, it was all him. And then God showed me how much was me, and I needed to be forgiven too. Okay? But people need time to work through things. That the feelings go on doesn't mean I haven't forgiven. Okay? If I make a decision to forgive somebody for that, and then I learn more, well, when I forgive again, I'm only forgiving for that. I've already done that. That's gone. Okay? So it's not, oh, I don't know whether I've forgiven well enough or whatever, because I've got the feelings. Yes, you have, but you do have to work through the feelings. So the third thing, if I'm getting them in the right order, is deal with the feelings. And deal with the feelings, you know, spider diagrams. Those help you unpack what it is that really you're hanging on to and things. 4, evaluate. Now, this is where we look at the events that have happened and look at what it did to our life or the life of the person that we're helping. Sometimes when things happen to little people, they feel that they are to blame. Well, big people do things to little people, okay? Or dreadful circumstances do things to little people. It's important to evaluate exactly what went on. And it's important not to dismiss what's happened to people. And you mustn't dismiss what's happened to you. When people have done things to you, the consequences are real and damaging and can be dangerous. And it's not about discarding that and thinking, well, you know, I should have got on with it. Okay? It's not that. It's about being real about what that did to you. And again, the process that we've done helps that immensely. And then it's about maybe confronting. Okay? Sometimes it's not possible to go back to a person and confront them. Sometimes it would be jolly dangerous to go back and confront them. Okay? Sometimes they're dead. Okay? But actually, when you forgive and you leave it to Jesus, you can leave him to sort that out. Nobody needs to go and confront. Okay? And if I was sending somebody back to confront, I would have spent a long time with them, making sure it was the right time, what they wanted to do, it's what the Holy Spirit is saying, doing. Because if somebody had done something to me and I went and knocked on the door and said, in that time, you said that, or you did that, and this is what it did to me. Well, I don't remember that at all, you know. Was I there? Because it's huge to you, but it isn't in there. So, and it can be devastating not to be heard when you've geared yourself up to go and try and be honest and be open and do it. And somebody said, I don't remember that. Are you sure it was me? Okay, so confronting is really, you know, a wisdom is required. The 6th one is reconciliation. And we're going to see that in the Sermon on the Mount, peacemakers are really, God's heart is making peace. God reconciles families. One of the wonderful things about people who come into the Waterfall, God will change your family. You know, you're connected to heaven, the Spirit flows through you, you're choosing to trust, you're a channel for God into your family and those around you in ways that you cannot dream of. And very often somebody starts in the family will come, and then it kind of goes round the rest of the family. Things change. Because God's heart is for families and reconciliation. God's heart is for his people for reconciliation. And reconciliation is the restoration of relationship. Okay, so not only are things like they were before, but you're going on, united on in a relationship. And we know, don't we, from the Reconciliation Board in South Africa and Northern Ireland, that amazing things that can come. What happened in Northern Ireland was that people got round a table and started telling their stories, and they found they were the same stories whichever side you were on. And then suddenly they realised they were all suffering the same things out of the violence. So instead of being one side against other side, actually around that table, and it was the women who led that peace process and the things. So reconciliation can be enormous, but it requires a lot of preparation, a lot of wisdom. Okay. But it's where God is drawing us to, his heart, that we as a people, as a church, should be reconciled with each other, that we shouldn't be holding on to things, that we should forgive. It's the oil in relationships. It's the oil in the church. It's the oil wherever we are in our families, is forgiveness. And what God said is that when I forgive, it goes into the sea of my forgetfulness. He didn't remember. It's gone. Do you realise that nobody is going to hell because of sin? Because it's dealt with. Jesus died on the cross for all sin. So if I recognise Jesus Christ and I come to him and allow him to forgive my sin, it's gone. What us in the church are going to go to hell for if we go is because we don't believe what Jesus says. It's unbelief. Okay? It's not believing what God says. And if you look at those verses from John, that's in those verses of actually what Jesus said. Okay? So forgiveness. So in the work that we did yesterday, as you looked at something in your life, you may have uncovered something that you need to forgive. Somebody you need to forgive. You may need to forgive yourself something. Really important that you forgive yourself. That verse, greatest commandment from the lips of Jesus. Love your Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind and all your soul. And love your neighbours as yourself. So we're forgiving and loving our neighbours. We're forgiving and loving ourselves. When we're like this, that seems impossible. But what God is saying, step in here. I'm loving you. You've got to listen to me. Your identity is who I say you are, and I say you're lovable. You've got to start receiving that love and believing that love. Because when you believe that love, then the love flowing out of you will increase exponentially. While you're doing this, I can play at loving people. Okay, guys? But inside, it's they don't love me. I'm not part of this. I don't belong. What a difference when God has smashed through that, has brought you into this place, has let you forgive, has taken all those hooks out, has forgiven me. So I can stand and receive the love of my Father. And as he loves me, I need to love me. And I need to stand in who he says I am. And then we're ready to do the work of the kingdom. Then we can move out. But he's so good, he doesn't wait till we're at that stage. Because he's working with us all the time, wherever we are. But what he's drawing us to is this freedom. Getting our mind so in line with His that we can receive this love and be beloved children. Okay, so that whatever life is throwing at us, we know our Father in heaven, because I will stand and trust Him, it's working through. He'll do it anyway, but because I choose to trust Him, because I choose to join Him in His enterprise, He can do more. He's chosen to use us. He could do it by Himself, but He chooses to use us. May I suggest that you have...
Can I just add two things? One of the things I learned a very long time ago is really easy. When you realise that there's, you're holding a grudge, you're not forgiving somebody, it's obviously really stop and almost do the evaluation. But then I choose to forgive. This is the deciding to forgive. It's a choice. It's that stepping out to forgive whoever it is for, and really list what you need to forgive them for. Really acknowledge what you think they've done. And then for how they made me feel, and again it comes back to acknowledge the feeling, because so often we choose to forgive them for something they've done, but not all that they've done. And we choose to forgive them without really acknowledging the way we feel, the damage they've done. And they may not in a sense have done anything, it's our perception of what they've done. But that's not the thing. The other thing I think I've really learnt since sort of getting to grips with this is this thing about keeping short accounts. Because people, because we're all broken, because we're all sinners, will continue to hurt us. And particularly people within the fellowship. It's that Matthew, and I never remember whether it's 16 or 18. If you have anything against your brother, go. Now, confronting sounds like a harsh word. But, it is worth, obviously, after evaluating and praying and recognising all those things, perhaps going and talking it through with them. So you have built a much stronger relationship. And I have to say that the shorter time between you acknowledging the pain and you, I'm going to use the word confronting, but going to them to seek reconciliation, the easier it is to do, because the chances are they are also in that place of feeling hurt. And you can go and say, I'm really sorry, but I want to talk about what happened yesterday. So, I think when you're in the process, don't allow things to build up. And don't necessarily just, do the first bit without the confrontation on current situations. Because I think, particularly in the church, it's really important to, build that strong relationship where you can be that open with one another.
It's very building. If we're vulnerable with each other and say, look, that hurt me, or I didn't get on with that, because this is what it did to me. It's always important to own your own stuff. So you're not laying it, you made me angry, because this starts being confrontational. But actually when that happened, this is what happened inside me. Okay? And we had that example yesterday from Prudence, that there was a reaction which really didn't have anything to do with John and what was said, but the words go into us and get to us. But that's one of the ways God uses people as grit for our growth. All right? So thank you for that. And what I would like you to do is to have 20 minutes. If you could be back here by, that clock is right, 25 to 11. Just go away and reflect with the Holy Spirit. Is there anybody that He wants to bring to your mind that you now need to forgive? Okay? And just have a time, and if there is, let it go. Okay, and that doesn't mean that maybe you don't have, as I said, feelings to carry on afterwards, but just come to this place and see what the Holy Spirit says to you. So you've got just a bit of time. And then what we'll do between 25 to and coffee is we'll then take Jesus there. So all this needs Jesus' touch then to seal and to hold. Okay, and we'll do that. Okay?